Hello, welcome to McBoss Capital channel. My name is Michael Chu. This is a market recap video for April 4th, 2025. We finished the week very badly. We have, as you can see here, a big bar down on the week. We basically undercut, the lows here, and it dropped really hard. And things really took a bad turn on Wednesday. Um, as you can see, let me here look at it right now. 15,708 was the previous low here, and we closed at 15,587. So we did undercut this previous base in August last year. So that was the last big correction here, and then we bounced back from there, really strong rally till December, and then from December we kind of stalled right there till February, I believe it's 19 or something like that. And then from there we start to go into another big drop here. And so far this correction is pretty severe. I believe we at 21%, close to 21%, something like that. So we are officially in bear market territory. If I look at QQQ, which is the Nasdaq 100 ETF, yeah, so it's also there. It's also 21%. And this one, let me see, 423. So we also undercut it. So we're very similar. Then we go to S&P 500, and also looks like this also undercut the previous low here. So you can see right there again, which means and the way we close on Friday is pretty bad, because we never found any bounce, and that's understandable because at the end of the day, lots of margin calls, people who didn't expect that 4 to 5% drop again on 2 days in a row. That's pretty tough, right? I think this is definitely one of the top back-to-back drop on 2 days in a row. I don't know historically how bad it is, but so I read some articles. They say it's like for sure in the top five or two bad days in a row. So let's go back to Nasdaq again. So here's the daily chart. So last week, the week before, we also had a bad close, right? Even though we yeah, right there, we closed pretty bad on a Friday, and we were very close to a new low. And then on Monday, we basically gapped down, but it did reverse, right? Like I think it was down like over 2%, but it reversed, and you can see it closed just slightly down for the day. It ends up only closing slightly low, and then we bounced 2 days from there, Tuesday, Wednesday, and things looks fine. Like I was still, putting in trades here. But this is where the trick was. This resistance on the 10-day moving average. So that was the bounce right there. And like I said, those 3 days, and during my live stream, for those who follow, or who have the time to follow, I did talk about how weak the bounce is. Like a lot of growth stocks, like they barely bounce, which really didn't give me much confidence to get back into the market. And like App, Palantir, like a lot of the high beta growth stock didn't bounce the way I wanted to bounce, especially when the index is bouncing. So I kind of knew, like, that this might have been a fake move. So I didn't really, like, good thing I didn't enter, and knowing Wednesday was the announcement of the reciprocal tariffs, which I have talked about before. Like I knew, a lot of people misunderstand like how big the deal is, and or maybe they don't misunderstand. They just didn't think Trump would announce such a thing. But obviously he did. And after that, we really took a dive right on Thursday. And you can see the gap down. And then on Friday we fall through on that. Because Chinese then retaliate back, right? Um, so yeah, like I mean, is it gonna get more worse? Yes, it could get more worse because who knows what other countries will announce this weekend, and that's probably why no one wants to hold over the weekend, and that's why there's probably no bounce. And if we look at the intraday chart here, you can see Thursday the gap down, like it couldn't even come back above the open price, right? It just keeps going straight down throughout the day. Very similar on Friday. Look at that. It opens and it kind of came back up just a tiny bit here, just a tiny bit, but really it was down for most, like pretty much never came back to the highs of the day. So and then we closed at the bottom, right? So same thing on Thursday, we closed at the bottom. So that's two back-to-back days. That's pretty much like over I I believe 5%, right? So yeah, so Thursday was 5.97%, and then on Friday was 5.82. So this is definitely one of the top back-to-back losses we've seen in history. 19, a lot of people talk about 1987 similar style of crashing. That was definitely more severe because back then there was like no short circuits and stuff. So like again, I'm not surprised if Monday we gap down again if there was some macro news come out, like say more countries retaliate, and there's no improvement in any sort of negotiation. Like yesterday, I'll just talk about this briefly here. Like Vietnam stocks, Vietnam, they had a talk with the Trump, and they want to do whatever is necessary to not have the tariffs, right? That they just announced because it was quite substantial, 46%. So that's what's happening there. And then a lot of the related stocks in the retail, like for example, shoes makers and even some clothings that were made in Vietnam, they all bounced back. Probably the most notable stock is Nike, and you can see Nike dropped pretty hard on Thursday. It was like 14% drop here, but Friday, I mean, it opens lower right there, and then it bounced, to close slightly, uh, well, not slightly, 3% above the previous day. So pretty good bounce. So here's the initial gap down on Thursday, and then on Friday it gaps down following the market. But then what happened was there was news that Trump and Vietnam government is talking, and that the Vietnam government is you know willing to do a lot to remove the tariffs. So we'll see what happens. But the stock was able to hold the gains after that, so that's pretty good. So I did take I don't usually trade stocks that have no earnings, but this is purely for a quick trade here. Um, if there's improvement in some of the negotiations, then I would see this stock easily bounce back to the 10-day, which is at a pretty steep slope right here. So we could see somewhere around this level here. So again, I'm hoping to do a quick trade here. I'm not trying to position into this stock. We'll see what happens next week. I mean, we could easily go back down again because maybe the negotiation is not going to go through, right? But right now there's hope, and if there's some hope, and because this sold off so hard, I think there's a high chance of a bounce here. And it already did on Friday, and it already proved that it can hold again, so that's also good. The shoe stores that got hit, like Crafts, Deckers, I mean, there's tons. So you can look into that. ChatGPT Copilot to help me. Um, so the list of stocks here impacted by U.S. tariffs, along with the affected countries and the initial drops on Thursday and Friday. So here we see Nvidia and Apple both got hit pretty hard here due to China tariff, which is 34%, and plus the 20% in previously announced, and the Apple also 34% here. Tesla also 34% tariff there. Nike 14% down. You see, these are huge drops in 2 days, right? For some of these mega caps. 14% down Nike, 12% down Friday. I don't think that's correct. I saw it bounce back. So some of this data might be not. I mean, yeah, I think this is not correct here. But anyhow, due to Vietnam 46% tariff, Lululemon 10%. Again, I think a lot of the retail ones in Vietnam or around that region, they bounce back. So if I go to Lulu, so this one also bounced back, right? So initially on Thursday it did drop 9%, and then it bounced back 3% on Friday. Again, you can see it make new low in the morning, but it bounced back after the announcement. So this is not 100% accurate. So I just want to point that out. And that's due to Cambodia, 49% tariff. Again, I'm not sure if all these tariffs are also accurate, but I think it's somewhat accurate. Ralph Lauren, 16% down initially, and then I think again same thing, it bounced back. So RL is actually one of the growth stocks on my list. And so it didn't bounce back that much on Friday. It actually, like it bounced back a lot from the morning, and it did have a big drop in the morning. But it closed only 0.1% down at the end of the day. And then we have Valero Energy, oil and gas hit by UK 10% tariff. Dell is hit hard. Western Digital also got hit hard. due to China tariffs. Microchip technology also hit hard. Best Buy also hit hard due to Japan. Lockheed Martin, Defense, Northrop, and L3Harris all related to India. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the only area. Like they might be in different countries too, right? Affect those stocks. So I'm not sure if it lists all of them here. General Dynamics also depends. Strong also depends. It's not just like the market honestly sold off really hard, and this is my tracking the IBD signal here. We definitely in market correction, 0 to 20% allocation. We have been like that for 8 days now since IBD switched back to 0 to 20% allocation. Anyhow, what I want to show you is the severity of the sell-off on Friday. So on Thursday, I think even CNBC reported a lot of retail investors tried to jump the gun, tried to catch the bottom. Again, catching the bottom is always a dangerous act because yes, it can bounce back and you can make your money pretty fast and you be the genius if you hit the bottom exactly where it was. But at the same time, if you went in on Thursday and then Friday we have even a bigger sell off than Thursday. And but what I want to showcase here is like how severe it is. Like there's in my list of stocks that I track based on accumulation versus distribution meaning selling in higher volume and accumulation being buying in higher volume. Look at that ratio. We're 29 stocks, probably the lowest, one of the lowest I've ever recorded in the many years, in the last 5, 10 years. So 29 versus 1349 in distribution, which is definitely a record in the last year or two. Then we have six industry groups that have more accumulation in terms of number of stocks versus 162 that are in distribution. And then when we go to the net accumulation in each sector that I track, technology, retail, industrial, health, commodities, energy, and financial, you can see the overall net, meaning accumulation minus distribution, and the number of stocks here is negative 196 in technology, negative 234 in retail, 276 in industrial. Like these are the areas that got hurt really bad. 156 in healthcare, 168 in commodities, and financials. Wow, look at that number, 289 got hit. So this is definitely like record numbers. So again, I don't want to say this is the bottom here. Like no one knows, right? We could get more bad news on the weekend, like more retaliation and all that stuff. Um, and we could have another bad Monday. Don't think that this is over. Like we could have another 4 or 5% down day on Monday. And at some point, this is going to be oversold, like meaning the market has discount all the bad news that could possibly come out in the future, and that's when it will start to bounce. And so far, because of this severity of drop, I think there's a high chance we are very near bottom, at least a short-term one. Because, like I say, I think it has discount a lot of bad news. Now, it doesn't mean all the bad news are out. It just means like the market is seeing through what's going to happen the next couple of months, right? And and we could see a bottom forming soon. So again, but we have to be patient. We have to watch for what the growth stocks are doing, what the general stocks are doing, what are some of the other signals telling us, like are the accumulation in stocks and this. And if you follow my live stream again in the morning, I try to go through stocks on the move. That's a very important screen to tell me whether growth are back and there's risk on appetite for growth stocks. But right now, like I think for days now, I haven't seen even over 20 stocks in the first hour. Uh, and this is a whole market, and we couldn't even find 20 stocks on the IBD stocks on the move screen in the morning. That's crazy. I don't think yeah, it's pretty bad. Like which leads to this sell off right now. So if you've been following me, like I think I have said that many times, especially in recent weeks, even while I was on vacation. I've been kind of sharing this, right? So hopefully most of you uh didn't get hurt too bad, like you weren't in the market too heavy. Um, so here's S&P, very similar chart. Look at the drop. Look at the severity on both days. They pretty much close at the bottom. There's no bounce whatsoever. A lot of margin calls probably happening at the end of day in the last half hour or so. or last 20 minutes. So that really, force people to sell, liquidate their position because they're on margin calls, because of the severity, right? Like 4 to 5% index are severe because when we look at growth stocks, they are down a lot. So I will try to show some of that drop in my growth stocks video. Make sure to follow that. But just to there's lots of double digit drops on Friday for many growth stocks. So yeah, very severe. Like people are forced to sell because of margin calls and also panic selling. So like I say, I think we're very close to short term bottom. We might have another one bad day or so. But that's at least what I'm hoping. Again, hope is not a strategy, so we just need to watch what the market do. And if it has a good upside reversal, I will definitely jump in now because I think, like I say, I think there's enough. So the next thing I want to show, like before I talk about the wicks, let's just finish the index here. Dow, very similar here. 38,000 is probably the next bottom here if to test. Russell is very bad. It is also in bear market territory. Look at this bar, insane. I mean, we are going back to I mean, I don't know if we'll go back to 2022 lows, but it did have some bounce here. Let me see. So this is the low here. It was able to close off the lows. So that's one difference in Russell. Dow was also closing low. So out of the four main index here, only Russell was able to close off slightly off the lows, whereas the other three index closed dead on the bottom. But again, Russell has been hit hard the most so far. We jump into the week, so we finally, even Thursday, I was surprised that it didn't even cross 30. I was so surprised. Like, I mean, there's no panic. That's why Thursday, like on Friday, like a lot of people, like CNBC report, a lot of retail investors jump in on Thursday, and then Friday, thinking that maybe there's a bottom there, and then Friday, obviously they got knocked out. A lot of them had to sell what they bought on Thursday because of the severity of the drop, and the drop is severe. Like especially if you're talking about growth stocks and stuff, like I said, many of them hit double digit drop on that day on Friday, on top of the Thursday, right? So Friday has kind of both the mentality of like, hey, you know, uh, we had a lot like panic, right? There's a lot of panic selling, for sure, and the way it closes also enforced kind of the idea that hey, people are really panicking. Now comes Monday, you're probably gonna see more media reporting on this, that the 2 day of drop in the market, how severe it is. People might panic on Monday, or put in their order for Monday to sell. So I would expect at least some selling on Monday as well. But again, I wanna see if the index can hold the day's low and how many times it tests that low intraday. That's really a key. If it tests it, multiple times and it couldn't hit a new low, that will give me confidence that some sort of selling is exhausted here, and that's when potentially we have a short-term bottom here. That's a possible like can be traded for a few days to a week, or even more. So let's see how that goes. So here's the 10-year yield. The 10-year yield dropped pretty hard. I believe it went under 4%. It closed under 4%. So that helps with the long-term mortgage rates and stuff, and that helped the home builder sector, which bounced back on Friday. So this is ITB ETF for home construction. So some of the home building stocks have also bounced back. MBR was one of them. Toll is another one. Palti Homes another one. So they all bounced back from the bottom on Friday. Just like a lot of the retail related for Vietnam uh, manufacturers there. The US dollar also bounced back on Friday. So you can see Thursday was a very big drop, but after that it has bounced back quite significantly. Um, Probably the most significant drop in terms of it was oil as well. Oil dropped also very significant, 7% on Thursday and then 6% on Friday. But that's also close off the lows here. So that's I don't know if this is the low, but it definitely has a big effect, right, on possible recession talks right now, and that's why the oil dropped this much. Gold is also dropping. initially it didn't drop much on Thursday, but Friday it kind of fall apart. So I'm not sure this is could be a longer term, like bigger pullback here. It could happen. Especially after Friday it closed, pretty much near the lows here. Uh, so we'll see if it breaks that 21-day pink line, then probably it will go down to the 50 red line there. Probably the one that no one talks about is, or at least not much attention on it, is the Bitcoin. Like the Bitcoin is really holding up surprisingly well. I think it closed at 83K thousand on Friday, after like at the end of market hours. But yeah, very surprising. 83,000, and I mean it has been holding up much better than every like so many index, right? And yeah, and Friday it bounced too. So very surprising. Of course, a lot of altcoins have been damaged. If you follow those, but Bitcoin is holding up so well, surprisingly. Again, we are in the digital era, and that's why the digital era, and this is kind of proven to be a long-term investment for non-government regulated type of investment. So it seems to be holding better as the world enters into a new world of protectionism in some ways. So here's IBD 50 ETF also making new lows again. Very big drop on Friday. You can see the index dropped 7.5%. Again, many growth stocks got decimated. A lot of them double-digit drop. So we're going to go through each spider sector very quickly here. Here we have XLK technology. Look at how severe this drop again. Drop at the bottom, close at the bottom. Definitely a huge drop here. Communications again similar Thursday Friday drop. Retail in general, again, it didn't close at a low, and partly probably due to consumer staples. So actually, I'm wrong. XLP actually didn't sustain its didn't actually it actually closed pretty bad on Friday. Look at this drop. So the staples were been holding up really good until Friday. Again, I don't know the reason for this like drop, but it's significant. Look at this drop. So this was so some people said like this market is won't bottom until it sells off in every area, including the most defensive areas such as consumer staples, and it did that on Friday. So that is basically people had to pull out their money even from the most defensive sector. I don't know the reason. Maybe it's panic. Maybe it's they're down so much on other areas they have to pull money to cover their margin call. I don't know. Um, but definitely this is a sign that even the most defensive areas getting punished. And consumer discretion also continue to drop. Yeah, so like travel sector and so forth, and auto sector and so. But if I go back to retail, so one thing that I'm trying to understand, why is this close in the middle range? If you go to the 5-minute chart, this actually align with the Vietnam story. If I show you like the VNM Vietnam ETF here, you can see a very similar move here. And a lot of, again, as at the beginning of the video, I talked about some of the retail, right? Like Crocs, like Lulu, like there's a whole bunch of the Nike, like on, like they all went through the same type of movement when after the Vietnam conversation with Trump. They pretty much shot up, and most of them able to hold their gains. Like they closed off still a little bit lower, but they were mainly holding most of the gains throughout the day, and so they're still positive on the day. So here's industrials. It also, as we saw in the accumulation table earlier, I showed it got just hammered this area. Materials similar. Utilities. So just like the staples, this is a defensive area, and it got hit so hard. Look at it undercut all these lows. I mean, we are at the low right now, pretty much. Health. Look at health. Again, another defensive area got hit so hard on Friday. Energy, and obviously hit hard, and financials. Look at this drop as well. Real estate, another defensive area. Look at this drop on Friday. So every single sector got hit. Like there's not one sector that didn't get hit. Just to show the severity of the market, right? Fraud didn't really help, even though it created 228,000 versus the estimate 130. The unemployment rate, however, ticked higher to 4.2%. Jerome Powell also speak around 9:25 a.m. There's basically he's reiterate there's no need to make any move right now. They want to continue to monitor to see what's going to happen with the tariff side. Um, and again, the market is really pricing in a slowdown. Um, basically, you know, this in the longer term, maybe the Fed will cut rates, also, and have huge tax cuts and so forth in the future. But right now, there's a lots of worry about stagflation. I think JP Morgan came out with a 60% chance of recession now, low growth, inflation possibly coming back due to this tariff. So, again, no one knows what the long-term picture look like. At least not right now. Next week we have CPI data come out on Thursday, so that will definitely move the market. And then we have producer price index on Friday, and also consumer Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index coming out on Friday. On the earnings side, we have lots of banks starting to report: J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, Bank of New York Mellon, and then we have Delta, and then we also have quarterly sales reporting from Nvidia and Taiwan Semiconductor. So let's jump to the next semiconductor ETF, pretty much close similar to the index at the lows here. Nvidia also hitting new lows right now. Looking at the software IGV ETF, also similar, closing at the bottom. Microsoft also closed at the lows here, although some analysts are saying that Microsoft has performed relatively better because it hasn't dropped as much. Again, Friday was a bad day, but there were some signs that it didn't drop as much on Thursday. On some slight relative performance, but again, Friday kind of is that. Also was Friday was the anniversary, and they introduced some Copilot AI features as well. And then on Meta, also closed near the lows here. Not much of a bounce by end of day. You can see this the low right here. Amazon also closed near the lows. Not much of a bounce. Google all the way at the bottom, so not a good sign. Then we'll move on to Apple. Apple suffered a huge tariff from both sides, US and China. Huge drop. I think it's one of the biggest 2-day drop in Apple history. Um, Tesla also have the same effect, but surprisingly, Tesla, hasn't hit new lows yet. And even Thursday, it was holding up pretty good until Friday, where the China announced their retaliation, and that really hurts them. But overall, this is holding up better than all the mega caps. And obviously, the other main fundamental story coming up is the robot taxi. Whether they can actually execute and produce that and get it on the road. That'll be very important in the strategy going forward for growth. And finally, we have Netflix here, also starting to hit their possible low here. So slightly still above 854, the lows here. But yeah. So anyhow, thank you for watching this video. Stay safe, everyone. Please like and subscribe if you and comment anything you like, and then I'll be doing another growth stock list video after this. Probably will come up later tonight. And have a good weekend.